So you stoked about Colin Powell?
Well, is it fair to say that the convention at this point is kind of a shit show, with a couple of exceptions?
It's not even a shit show. Like it's not even like incompetent. Like, the best you could have hoped for was like a lousy, like uh the convention equivalent of like Vox.com, like
Mm.
just solid four across the board. And instead it's like they use the convention as an opportunity to just, you know, punch the left in the nuts like repeatedly and platform every terrible, despicable character from the past 20 years of American
It,
politics.
and it really was something like that. It's like they're just bringing back every ghoul they could. I was surprised, they haven't rolled out W yet.
Yeah. I mean, that's
You
what I was
know,
thinking. It
should
made me
have
think that, like,
have Carl Rove doing the
yeah,
show.
Dick Cheney, Newt Gingrich, um, Sarah Palin.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I mean, she's a total like, Trump Republican. She's not
Yeah,
gonna.
probably not. I mean, they'll get never Trumpers. There's a
Um,
few of them, but I mean that's exactly what it was. And the first night was really covered by mainstream media around the Michelle Obama speech, which he had the lips.
Kasich. I feel like Kasich got a lot of attention,
I mean,
right?
you think so? I mean, I mean, the only thing I caught with the MSNBC and CNN crowd was all the Michelle Obama. Oh, how inspiring!
What
What an
drives me
inspiring
nuts about
speech.
these assholes is that they can't even hate the Republic. It's like you don't have to be nice. Like I see some like people defending Colin Powell and like John McCain, and it's like
Right. It
you don't have to be nice to them.
no.
You can take their support and continue to be yourself. It's like the whole thing with like the Rogan endorsement all over again, right? It's
Right.
like you get the endorsement by vociferously arguing for your platform, not by caving to outside interests. Like
Yes.
you don't have to, like you don't have to like lick their balls just because the fucking, war criminals want to endorse, one of their own. It's like,
Exactly. And what it symbolizes to me is just an ideological shift. These are hardcore Republicans 15 years ago, and they're speaking at the DNC convention.
well,
Another
like
15 years,
nobody,
we
yeah.
don't oppose this, and we're gonna end up with more of these Republicans. You're gonna, it's
We
it,
have
it
the Conservative Party and the Eco-Fascist Party.
I guess that's kind of where we're headed. We're gonna end up with more and more Republicans under the tent. If that's supposed to be the left party in the country, I mean,
Um,
it,
and like I mean, like it looks to be that like Biden is starting to slip in the polls too. So it's like
oh, he's
it's a
really
shitty
really slipping.
policy. Like, what do you?
No, the thing is, he stopped. He
Nobody
stopped
likes these
hiding.
people. Like
He stopped
the Never
hiding and
Trumpers
started
are like the
talking.
most hated people in all of American politics. Like
Yes.
the only people that like them are the shit libs that are 100% in the can for whatever corporate Democrat is up there anyway. So
Right.
you are not. There's no constituency that they represent. Like
Hmm.
Republican voters are not listening to John Kasich and Colin Powell. They're
No.
listening to Trump and Q. Like that's the leaders of
But
the
again,
Republican Party now.
it shows what
Like,
voters that they're trying to go after. They're trying to go after those right-leaning
but
centrists
there's
and
no one
those never
there.
Trump Republicans. There's barely anybody there to go after anyway. But
And they didn't even have to do this. It's like they could have continued to go after them just by their messaging. They didn't have to like book them all at the convention and just like rub like the entire base, like everybody under 45, like just rubbing their faces in it. Like it's just how is that a winning strategy? Like they deserve to lose, and it's like
well, to your point, I mean, look at what happened in that last CNN poll that came out. So the last CNN poll had Biden slipping 10 points down. He's holding a 4-point lead in the poll, and that's within the margin of error. I'm not sure. I wouldn't call it one way or another right now. It's going
well,
to end up
like
being close. It's going to end
if
up
they
coming down
get
to those same
within a
states.
point though, they're gonna steal it. That's what I've been saying all along. If they can get it close, they're gonna steal it. Like if it's as close as it was with Hillary,
Right.
Trump's gonna steal it. Like even if it's flipped, right? Like they're
I think
don't know.
I mean, it's gonna end up being one of those things where it's gonna come in within a couple of points, and the debate is gonna be part of that whole
It's gonna
shift,
get
and
smoked in the debate too. Like
they're gonna pump Biden full of addies and have
I
him
don't know. I feel like they don't
speak
like to
all
do
through
that
it.
though, because like he hasn't really been up to, I feel like there must have been, because like after that debate, he was gone for like a week, remember? Like
Right.
he didn't make any appearances. I wonder if it like that's the recovery period. So that's why he
I'm
doesn't.
pretty sure. And I mean, isn't that the timing with these next debates is going to be about a week apart anyway?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not quite sure, but what I mean, I could see them pumping him full of whatever, and then having him roll out there, and him having a decent
he's just
appearance,
such
and
a
then
bad candidate.
he
He's just
is a
so
terrible
bad. He's the
candidate. And
worst one.
well,
Like,
at you know, to go back to what you were saying after Kamala's pick, you were saying there he was gonna get a bump down from picking her.
yeah, like it was the like. I mean, I feel like they weren't going to pick anybody. If they'd picked a progressive, they would have gotten a bump up, right?
Yeah.
And everybody else, it was just about like managing how much they were going to go down, you know?
Right.
Like they could have, like, and I thought that they would have considered Hillary if they could handle it, right? But I feel like she would have evened it up. Kamala was a 10-point bump. Hillary would have been a 14-point, decrease.
Well,
But
the first night of the convention, pretty much the only one that actually made a policy argument for Biden was Bernie,
yeah,
and
of
that was
course.
predictable. He probably made a better policy argument for Biden than even Biden has.
Yeah, he can't talk. Like he can't like tweeted last night that like if it was Amy Klobuchar, she would at least be able to explain like what Trump's doing wrong. Like Biden can't even explain like what Trump is doing wrong. He talks about like the masks thing. That's all he talks about. Nothing
Right.
about the um, you know the bread lines or the eviction crisis or
Hmm.
the 20% unemployment. None of that stuff. Like the 40 million people without health care. Like he doesn't talk about any of that shit because that's not what they're running on. They're not trying to run on policy. They want it to be that like the policies are the same. It's all just the only difference between the parties is like style or something.
It's
You know?
Michelle Obama's speech was just orange man bad and a little bit of voter shaming.
Yeah,
That's what it
she
was.
condescending bitch, man. I fucking hate Michelle Obama. I used to not really like. I was kind of like neutral on her, like
Uh,
whatever. But after that fucking speech, man, I really don't like her now.
yeah, I
Like,
don't. I got in a conversation with one of these shit libs about AOC had done some kind of mundane tweet about thanks for your words, Michelle Obama, and I know she's doing her whole,
Mama Bear.
yeah, she's doing her whole shtick, not trying to
Michelle
go
Obama
ahead,
is like the anti bear.
but she's doing that, and I commented about, I hope this is all just your strategy or something like that, right? And then you had this shit lib that chimes in and saying, "Oh, I get it. You didn't watch the speech, so that's." And I'm like, "So if I watched the speech, what I was going to be inspired by Michelle Obama?"
Her speech was just like more empty platitudes. It was what
That's
you said. It was like,
that's all it was. It's all. I mean, and I kept thinking to myself, coming from being a Hillary supporter in 16, how did I ever get bought into
that's what I
platitudes?
said,
They're not
man.
saying anything.
I mean, to be fair, like I feel like in 2016, at least part of the time, Hillary kind of adjusted to Bernie, right? Being in the
Yeah.
race and started talking more about substantive stuff,
Right.
but still not a lot.
No,
Like,
what she would do is she would go ahead and engage with him on policy, and then she had this very technical way of explaining things, right? She has to do that. But what that did for me when I would look at her is be like, okay, I can see that she knows what her shit is. I like that. All right.
she's like, because
But
her whole style of politics is about the like divvying out interests to various like lobbying groups and donors and shit like that and trying to balance the various competing donor interests. Like that's how technocrats govern. It's
yeah,
like who can I piss
but that's
off
what you
to get
get though.
away with it.
It's that same kind of vibe that you get when you hear Elizabeth Warren speak, where it's very technocratic, and in
Hmm.
some way that appeals to you, in to some people at least, when you can see that, oh wow, she's so well-rounded, she has such a well-rounded grasp on policy, she has a well-rounded grasp on how to govern and all this kind of stuff. If you're not looking past the surface level and the implications of what they're trying to do, then yeah, it's a very surface level analysis. But it does have that appeal. So if you go and you look at someone like Biden, like you're saying, he can't do that.
No,
But
he can't
we
do
have to
anything. He can
we have to
barely even
defeat Trump
insult
though.
Trump. Like, if he does a 5-minute interview on cable, like he's lucky if he gets off like one coherent, you know, paragraph, right? Like, let alone like a coherent paragraph
Right.
about why Trump is bad. Like, he can't do anything right, and it's like, oh God, it's like they're just lucky that Trump is so bad, right?
All right.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's true. All right, now on night two, that was tonight. The couple of big highlights other than,
Sidney
Kasich and
McCain,
everything. And yeah, the Cindy McCain, yeah, Bill Clinton rollout, which we talked about right now.
why,
Uh,
why do they have to keep platforming Bill Clinton? And then
there's
today,
not a
those
good reason
photos
to.
of him with Virginia Giuffre, um,
It
those
was
come out
always,
today.
and there was something that the judge always threw out, which I'm sure they would have thrown out anyway, but now it has a little bit of backing to it where you see
It
that
always
there's,
did. They just didn't have. We're getting more proof. Like, as
yeah,
the time goes
exactly.
by, we get more because like we knew he was on the flight logs,
Right,
2016. Like we've
right.
known since
And
then.
I
Like,
mean, Clinton has a reputation, has always had, I mean, it's a 30-year reputation as a horn dog. But there's a difference
Mhm.
between being that horn dog and being a fucking pedophile.
But like all of those victims are credible too. The ones that
Right,
Trump brought to the debate in 2016, those are all like I believe all of those women, right? Like
right.
every single one of them. And
Yeah,
some of
well,
that stuff is pretty serious. Like,
yeah, it is. So it's what you said. There's no reason to go on platforms, do, but
why
they go ahead and they do.
just let him retire in, some
Relative
sort of
obscurity.
yeah, like let him, do like Obama does, right? Like,
Well, at least Obama knows how to keep quiet
so I'm
sometimes, right?
saying,
But
like, Bill
um,
Clinton is making appearances like he can't, you know, I guess like he loves the life. He's like Dershowitz, right? He just can't say no to getting his name in the press.
well, the other part of the night that was a highlight for me, if you ever looked at my Twitter, was AOC's
He's fucking AOC simp.
nomination of Bernie Sanders. We had talked about a little bit about how they only gave her half a minute, or they gave her a minute. And they gave her a minute and a half now at the end of it when I
Yeah, it was
caught
a
the phone.
minute and a half, huh?
Yeah, they
It was
gave
a
her they
minute
ended up
37.
giving her another 30 seconds so graciously, but there was a lot of reaction from the shit libs. There was a reaction from the left from this, and um, I kind of had my own reaction to it outside of what everybody was kind of saying. So what it was just a ceremonial thing. The Bernie had over 300 delegates. He gets to get nominated. They do a little introduction. Tulsi did this last time, right? But what I liked about it was that she didn't try to go and say this is a co-opted message of progressives now unifying with Biden. She didn't go and give a false message of unity. You know, she didn't mention Biden in her speech. She didn't even mention Trump in her speech that I can remember. You
Let's
know,
play it. Play the
so
speech.
Good evening, bienvenidos, and thank you to everyone here today endeavoring towards a better, more just future for our country and our world. In fidelity and gratitude to a mass people's movement working to establish 21st century social, economic, and human rights, including guaranteed health care, higher education, living wages, and labor rights for all people in the United States. A movement striving to recognize and repair the wounds of racial injustice, colonization, misogyny, and to propose and build reimagined systems of immigration and foreign policy that turn away from the violence and xenophobia of our past. A movement that realizes the unsustainable brutality of an economy that rewards explosive inequalities of wealth for the few at the expense of long-term stability for the many, and who organized a historic grassroots campaign to reclaim our democracy. In a time when millions of people in the United States are looking for deep, systemic solutions to our crises of mass evictions, unemployment, and lack of health care, En el espíritu del pueblo and out of a love for all people, I hereby second the nomination of Senator Bernard Sanders of Vermont for President of the United States of America.
And
She mentioned the problems that predate all of the current characters.
exactly, and she recognized the progressive movement as its own thing. That's why I was happy with what she said.
Yeah, she
And
gave a great speech.
yeah, but the other part of it that I looked at it as a way that she, in a way that she did kind of snub Biden. She could have made it all about Trump and defeating Biden, and the other way around. She could have made it all about Biden unifying and defeating Trump. She could have done that.
Well, if they'd given her 5 minutes like they gave Kasich, she could have done that, right? Like, if she only has a minute and a half, she's only going to do like the most important shit, and that's what she did. She put that at the top, like, these are the issues that actually matter. This is what I'm going to talk about in my 90 seconds. Like, oh God, I fucking hate this party. I hate it. I hate it all, man. Really, like.
But the libs really had a negative reaction to this
Oh
whole.
my God, the shittiest shit libs.
They really didn't. I don't think they grasped that this was for me.
Well,
it was
the fucking mainstream media led them the blue checks and
yeah,
all. Like they did it. They instigated it. Like
yes,
just
that's exactly what happened.
Like, horrible people.
They mentioned that it was that she snubbed Biden and didn't endorse him in the speech, and then
unreal.
She's already endorsed Biden, first of all.
Unreal.
You know,
that's like this party is so terrible.
The only thing that she did was she used a ceremonial procedural part of the convention to go ahead and highlight progressive issues, and to me, in a way, it was to kind of thumb her nose at the establishment, very minorly.
I don't know, man. Maybe they like wanted her to do that so at least somebody was a grown up. That's what it is. It's like a bunch of fucking like senile rotten blobs, and then she's just like the one adult in the room who like actually understands big picture issues that they some of them I feel like it's ignorance and some of them it's intentional,
but the other part that I came away with it is it caused all this media stir, and it kind of just fucked up the night for the establishment by drawing attention to her instead of this was the formal nomination of Joe Biden.
Like we've been saying in the last couple episodes, these people are so incredibly petty. They want to destroy her for political reasons, but they also want to destroy her for personal reasons. They hate how popular and effective she is.
Yes.
If she wasn't doing that, somebody else would have to be doing that. It's not like silencing her is not going to silence the real problems, right? Like it's not going to keep the left from existing, right? It's just going to make it harder for you to communicate with them. They need to embrace her. And just like what's so disturbing is they can't even lie anymore. Like Obama was really good at lying about shit, right? He spun everything and said it in such a way that like you could squint and it was one thing or another.
But and the way that she's talking, she has a way of rubbing progressives the wrong way because they're not sure if she's with us, if she's in the establishment camp, or where she is. But I'm still firmly in that thought that she's just doing what she has to politically, so that way she can advance herself and advance the progressive values that I do think that she believes in.
I think she's great. I think anybody attacking her is a psycho.
And you keep saying I'm gonna make it a thing, so okay, I'm gonna rebrand the thing, all right? All right, we're calling it the Corleone strategy.
The Corleone kiss, like the Corleone maneuver.
It's just a matter of you're keeping your adversaries within the party close to you in order to go ahead and advance your own goals. That's it.
See, but I don't think that's the dynamic, though. I think it's like it's not like you can't change their opinions. Their opinions are unchanging. There's nothing that a politician can do that will get the interests that are represented by these corporate Democrats. That's who's shaping the policy. It's nothing to do with how nice she plays with them. It's like those idiots who said that like being mean on Twitter would cost the election for Bernie or something. You can't reason with them. They were going to say that the whole nothing we can do can change the interest of capital.
No, and I don't think it's about winning over establishment figures. I think it's about neutralizing some of the effect that they have with the shit libs. Because if you go and you get opinions from shit libs about her, it's not nearly as negative as when you hear them talk about Bernie.
That's because she hasn't. I still think that has to do with the Clinton campaign. Like they went scorched earth on Bernie. Like he's just. It's like. Trying to think of a good comparison, but it's like they just soiled his name. Like they dragged him through the mud so much that
Right.
like
And that whole thing about he's not a real Democrat. He's
yeah,
this and this and this. That's not going
that's
to work
it.
on AOC. I don't think that'll work on AOC.
Well, the other story I did want to get into with you a little bit. It's a minor story, but still, it could be something just to keep your eye on. There's been a few incidents of plague breaking out in a few of the states, and in China there was also an outbreak, and they did a little bit of a lockdown there to contain it. And yeah, plague. It's kind of that throwback thing that people assume that we've already kind of um, evolved past, right? So that it's not really so much of a threat as it was when during its initial, well, when you think about Black Plague, when that epidemic or pandemic broke out in the Middle Ages. So I did a little bit of research on this and stuff. So with Black Plague, that initial outbreak, or one of the initial outbreaks, I should say, it killed about between 75 and 200 million people at the time. And the world population at that time was just about 500 million people. So this is one of the most destructive diseases in human history. And a lot of people might be surprised to know that it still has a really high mortality rate. Now, there's 3 different variations of plague that you can get. You get bubonic, and there's a pneumonic, and then there's a septic one, and septic anemic, something like that. And they all get spread the same way, and it's not something that you get by person-to-person contact. It's something you have to get. Usually, you get bit by a flea that's carried on some kind of animal, and it's from there. If you don't detect it early, it can become really deadly.
How
It
long's
has
early though?
within a couple days.
So
Plague.
you
So
get sick right away, and if you don't go to the doctor, you're fucked.
yeah, if you get bit by a plague flea and you don't get it treated within a week, you could possibly die right away.
Holy fuck, dude.
Yeah. Even now,
Right.
even now. So what happens when you get when you get bit by that flea, most of the time it'll go ahead, about 80% of the time it'll infect your lymph nodes. You'll get those big old black pustules on under your arm, your groin, wherever you get it. But in 20% of cases, you get the pneumonic version, which it goes and infects your lungs, and that has about 100% mortality rate.
Holy fuck.
Or
And
you get
20% of the time?
20% of the time, you get the pneumonic version, or you get the septic anemic version that
And
infects
that's
your blood.
blood turns black.
Yeah, I think that's
man.
what you get gangrenous on your extremities.
Oh man.
This is all happens right away. This is why the plague has a little bit of a harder time spreading from person to person, because it's so deadly that the person usually dies before it can spread to somebody else.
There's not as many fleas. People don't live as close to fleas as they used to.
Yeah, so I mean, a big part of that was the conditions at the time of the Middle Ages made it more conducive to fleas, rats, all that kind of stuff that people think about. But what initially was spreading it wasn't even rats; it was dogs and cats.
And then what? They would like breathe on you or
No,
scratch you? What?
the dogs and the cats were carrying those fleas.
Oh, the fleas, duh.
Right.
So it's
So
always the fleas.
what the initial measure was when there was a plague outbreak was to kill all the dogs and the cats before they could spread everything. But when they did that, then the fleas jumped over to the rats, and then the rats ended up spreading out the disease. This was back then.
How do you feel about those like those CRISPR studies that would like change the DNA to make them eventually die out? Like them, I know they did a test for the mosquitoes, and
Mm-hmm.
so I saw some research that said that they could do that. They could remove them from the ecosystem, and it wouldn't have any like long-term consequences.
And then doing that in regards to what, the fleas?
Yeah, the plague fleas. Like, I wonder if I feel like they're probably not an essential part of any kind of ecosystem. Like if we can get rid of mosquitoes
Right.
are like a lot of things eat them, you know.
Right.
Like if they can take them out, I'm sure we could probably take the flea out too.
I mean, really, there's just so much destructive power behind it. So if it wasn't an ecological impact of these fleas, then it would probably be a good move to go ahead and do, because it really is a lot more deadly than people are probably aware of. It's just a rare instance, but for some
Or like
reason,
ticks,
yeah, but for
ticks and
some
Lyme
reason,
disease.
these flare-ups have been happening a little bit more, and
What's up with that?
yeah, it's a little bit weird. And in antiquity, the plague season was always the warmer seasons, and it would disappear around winter. And what popped in my head was, with climate change, we've been having warmer seasons longer.
Hmm.
So it is a little bit of an environment where something like plague could be a little bit more of a threat than it would otherwise be. And usually you find instances of plague hitting in the southwest region, which is around where you've seen these flare-ups in these few states, and they're getting spread on, whatever you think. Squirrels actually have been carrying the
Oh,
fleas.
shit.
You know,
Oh man. Yeah, we need to fucking eradicate those plague fleas.
and
I'm
you
all
gotta,
for it, man.
and you got to think about it in this way too. Was our measures for COVID have been staying in, social distancing, and in a lot of ways that's conducive to being
Yeah,
able
we
to
still
go ahead
need to
and
get the
spread it.
flea though.
I mean, people have dogs, people have cats, rats get in houses,
Um,
squirrels out in your front yard.
um, yeah. I think it's like you said, not enough people live around fleas for it to be spread like it did in the Middle Ages. I feel
Yeah,
like that's the difference,
but
and especially
the
because you
last
get sick pretty quickly, you
yeah,
know.
well, the last instance that I could see of a significant plague outbreak was actually in Madagascar,
Hmm.
and there was um about 2,000 people that ended up contracting plague, and
Yeah.
around about 10% of them ended up passing away.
Oh.
So just a point of comparison, if there was an outbreak of that kind that would happen in the United States, it would be the equivalent of about 25,000 people getting it.
Shit. 25,000 getting it or 25,000 dying?
Just getting it. So about 2,000 people dying from it.
I feel like um, there's more people in Madagascar than I thought. Um, well, maybe we can give it to John Kasich. Like, I feel like he'd be a good plague victim. Parody.
Well, the last story I wanted to go ahead and tell you in regards to plague, you'll probably like this one, was there was an outbreak in San Francisco in 1900,
Mm.
and initially the capitalists tried denying that there was a outbreak in order to protect their business interests.
And then what happened? They caught him and ate him.
No, eventually it came to light that there was a plague outbreak. The feds, I think, at that point, because they were working under Roosevelt, exposed that
Back
they
when
were
the feds were
covering up this.
competent,
Yeah.
they actually did shit.
Yeah, the feds. Well, they were working under Teddy Roosevelt, so they went ahead and exposed that there was some kind of cover up, and the outbreak was limited to 120 people in San Francisco, and 119 of them died. Thank you for joining us on this latest webisode.
Night 2 of the 2020 DNC convention. The Colin Powell night.
Yeah,
Not the AOC night.
we'll keep these clips coming, and make sure you tune in to our latest episode of our podcast when we interviewed Kenzo. If you haven't heard that already, go ahead and check it out.